World Health Organization this morning has classified processed meat such as bacon and sausage as carcinogenic, directly involved in causing cancer in humans.
Processed meat is clearly linked to an increase in cancer.
Hot dogs or bacon could be just as dangerous as smoking cigarettes.
The World Health Organization had looked at over 800 studies from 10 different countries, finding a direct link to consuming processed meat and cancer. Just one serving of deli meats daily increases your risks of colorectal cancer by 18%. I had no idea that what we ate affected cancer rates, but I never felt like I had eaten a lot of processed meats until I realized that processed meat includes hot dogs, bacon, sausage, salami, ham, pepperoni, cold cuts, and deli slices, basically everything I grew up eating. The World Health Organization classifies processed meat as a Group 1 carcinogen, the same group as cigarettes, asbestos, and plutonium, and classifies red meat as a Group 2 carcinogen. Was this like I had essentially been smoking my entire childhood? If processed meats are labeled the same as cigarettes, how is it even legal for kids to be eating this way? I thought this was new information, but many of these studies have been around for 50 years. I couldn't believe I'd been eating processed meats virtually my entire life and was just now finding out how dangerous they are. Why hadn't I been hearing about it from the American Cancer Society, the largest cancer group in the nation? When I went on their website, I was shocked to see that none of this information was featured on their homepage. But even more shocking, on their Eat Healthy page, they actually encouraged eating Group 1 carcinogenic foods like processed turkey and canned meats. This is after the World Health Organization reviewed over 800 studies definitively linking processed meat to cancer. Government and media almost exclusively blame lack of exercise and sugary foods as a cause of diabetes. But I wanted to talk with an actual expert on the role of diet and diabetes. I went to speak with premier physician, diabetes expert, and researcher, Dr. Neil Barnard. What role does sugar play in causing diabetes?
It drives me crazy. Diabetes is not and never was caused by eating a high carbohydrate diet, and it's not caused by eating sugar. The cause of diabetes is a diet that builds up the amount of fat into the blood. I'm talking about a typical meat-based, animal-based diet. You can look into the muscle cells of the human body and you find that they're building up tiny particles of fat that's causing insulin resistance. What that means is the sugar that is naturally from the foods that you're eating can't get into the cells where it belongs. It builds up in the blood, and that's diabetes.
I had never heard that meat was associated with causing diabetes. We had always been told that sugar or obesity caused it. Renowned weight loss bariatric surgeon Dr. Garth Davis, though, agreed.
Everyone thinks that you get diabetic because of carbs. They did a huge study in that EPIC study, 500,000 people. Carbs consumption was inversely related with diabetes. In other words, the more carbs someone ate, the less diabetes they had. But meat was strongly correlated. Get that aha moment. The starches, the carbs are good for you. They're not bad for you. This idea that carbs make you fat is utterly ridiculous. Carbs cannot make you fat in and of themselves. We have storage in our muscles and in our liver for carbs called glycogen. So when we eat carbs, we either store it or we burn it. Now, eat fat, that goes straight to your fat. Your body can't turn those carbs into fat unless you're really overdoing the calories. Obesity, it's a death sentence. You're at much higher risk of getting cancer. You're almost certainly going to get diabetes. I mean, no one wants to fat shame, and we all want everybody to be comfortable with our bodies, but this movement to be comfortable with our bodies has made us comfortable with being sick, and that's a huge problem. I go into the hospital and I look around me, people on dialysis, all these sick people, and just about every disease in there is because of what people are eating.
Here's the thing. If I eat a sugary cookie, the sugar lures you in like the Trojan horse, but waiting inside that cookie is a huge load of butter or shortening, and that's what fattens you up, and that's the part that leads to the diabetes. It's the fatty foods, not really so much the sugar.
It's not that sugar is good for you. There's no nutrients in it. It's excess calories. But when you eat sugar, you don't get inflammation right away. When you eat sugar, you're not getting plaques forming in your vessels. When you're eating sugar, your body's going to store most of it as glycogen or burn it as calories. And so this focus on sugar has taken all the focus off meat, dairy, eggs, pork, turkey, chicken.
People need to understand, if their child gets diabetes, you've just taken 19 years off their lifespan. We're talking life and
When we speak of heart disease, I would say the role of alcohol is pretty small. The role of sugar is very small too. Smoking is big, but the good news is that most people have quit or never did smoke. The problem with animal-based diet, its contribution to heart disease is huge and it is pervasive.
All this expensive imaging, procedures, bypasses, medication, none of which has one solitary single thing to do with the causation of the illness. So you die of a completely benign, foodborne illness that never had its causation treated.
When we eat these kind of dead meat bacteria toxins, within minutes, you get this burst of inflammation within your system such that you basically paralyze your arteries. You get this stiffening of the arteries, their inability to relax normally in half. So it's not like decades down the road eating unhealthy, there'll be some damage. No, we're talking damage right then and there within minutes of it going into our mouth.
Many people are given the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease when it's not true Alzheimer's at all. The vast majority of people suffer dementia due to their tiny blood vessels in their brain clogging up and their nerve cells being shortchanged of oxygenated blood. And guess where that blood vessel dementia comes from? Those little tiny arteries are clogging up from that steady stream of fat, cholesterol, etc.
It's really quite clear from the standpoint of cancer and the standpoint of cardiovascular disease that animal protein plays an enormous role.
Is chicken better?
It's a question of whether you want to be shot or hung.
The flesh food that I would eliminate from the American diet would be poultry, would be turkey and chicken. A brilliant advertising campaign has convinced people that, oh, it's white meat, it's healthier.
The leading source of sodium in the American diet for adult is chicken. It can be labeled all natural chicken, but be injected with the salt water, I think up to 800 milligrams of sodium.
Heterocyclic amines are clear-cut carcinogens, and they can form in any kind of meat as it's heated, as it's cooked. But by far the biggest source is chicken. We sent researchers into fast food and family restaurants. Not only were there carcinogens in every single restaurant, but we found them in every single chicken sample that we took. If somebody brings their family in and they're buying a bucket of chicken, nobody tells them that there are carcinogens. If you're selling carcinogens to people, you've got to warn them that they're in there.
But the American Cancer Society encourages people to switch from red and processed meat to chicken. Why would the American Cancer Society tell people to switch from eating one carcinogenic food to another when a Harvard University study showed that men with prostate cancer who eat large amounts of chicken increased their risk of the disease progressing 4 times?
The number one dietary source in America of cholesterol is chicken because of the volume of chicken. You know, chicken's become grilled chicken and organic chicken. It's machismo, but it has nearly as much cholesterol per gram as red beef. So just on sheer volume, it's the number one source. Yeah, eggs being close behind.
I'd never really thought about eggs much. I just thought of them as a standard part of a healthy diet. But then I found a study suggesting that eating just 1 egg a day can be as bad as smoking 5 cigarettes per day for life expectancy.
The yolk of a hen's egg is the most concentrated glom of saturated fat and cholesterol. It is made to run a baby chicken for 21 days with no outside energy. It is pure fat and cholesterol. And when we put that into our bloodstream, it coats our red blood cells. Our blood gets thicker and more viscous. It changes our hormone levels. It raises our cholesterol levels. There's nothing healthy about eating the yolk of the egg.
I was, however, able to talk to the president of the American College of Cardiology, Dr. Kim Williams.
So the American College of Cardiology is a 47,000-member and growing organization with a dedicated mission to reduce heart disease and to improve patients' lives. And if you look at the incidence of hypertension and diabetes and mortality in men, they actually get reduced as you go higher and higher in terms of how much you restrict animal products.
What about fish?
So fish is a little different. You've got the 4 worries, which is PCBs, mercury, saturated fat, and cholesterol. And the cholesterol is all over the place. You can hit tuna in water, that'll be almost less than a glass of milk, to salmon or tilapia, which is higher than a pork chop.
If you look objectively at fish, what you find is they've become essentially mercury sponges. And that's why in many parts of the country they warn you, don't have more than so many of these fish a week because it's getting too much mercury can kill you.
Fish are eaten by bigger fish who are eaten by bigger fish, and these pesticides and herbicides bioaccumulate in the fish flesh. And these big fish, including the salmon, which people think is the healthiest fish, truth is the amount of pesticides and herbicides in the flesh of these fish are shocking, and they have estrogenic and cancer-promoting properties in them.
They'll say, well, but don't sardines have less concentration of toxic waste product than other ones? Something being less toxic doesn't make it healthy. It just makes it less toxic.
Farmed fish is by no means healthier. All the antibiotics that these animals have to be fed, similar to chickens and turkeys kept in confinement. These fish get infections. They get fungal infections. They get bacterial infections. You've got to feed them antifungals, antibiotics, and these substances accumulate in the fish flesh as well.
I always knew that pollution was bad for our health, but I had never thought about the environmental pollutants affecting food.
Dioxins, being the most toxic man-made chemicals known to science, cause all sorts of things. They cause endometriosis, they cause cancers, they cause endocrine disruption problems. Most of your exposure, 93% of it, comes from eating meat and dairy products because it climbs up in the food chain so effectively. So you can get exposed to living near these incinerators and breathing it, but it'll take you 14 years to breathe in as much dioxin as a cow will ingest by eating the grass in one day. And that dioxin will accumulate in its fat, which includes the milk and the meat, and anyone eating meat or dairy products is going to get that dose of dioxin, so it climbs up the food chain every step. Men have no way in their bodies to get rid of dioxins, but women have two ways. They're both involving having a baby. One is that dioxin crosses the placenta into the growing infant, and the other is that it comes out from the breast milk. So if you have a meat and dairy consuming mother breastfeeding that infant, then the highest impacts of toxic exposure like mercury and dioxins will go to that infant.
Pregnant women are told, oh, certain types of fish should be avoided. But what about all these other animal products which are introducing, imagine as the fetus is developing, introducing these very harmful toxins which create reproductive abnormalities, developmental problems, and hormonal issues right as the child is developing, the most critical stage of development.
It does make you worry when people say, don't you want to have a little bit of milk because you're pregnant? Don't you want to have some fish because you're pregnant? Who do you think is going to get the chemicals that are in that?
All these environmental toxins and toxins from the feed that they're being fed accumulate in their tissues and are released into the mother and unfortunately to the child when you eat these products when you're pregnant. So this includes antibiotics, hormones, steroids in animal feed. Commercial animals are largely fed GMO corn and soy, which are very laden in pesticides. PCBs have been banned since the 70s, but they persist in the environment. Dioxins, all of these compounds can create hormonal, reproductive, developmental damage as well.
I had always been concerned about the possible health impacts of GMOs, but then found out that most of the world's GMO crops are actually consumed by livestock, with dairy cows consuming the most per animal. This fact, with everything I'd learned about bioaccumulation, made dairy terrifying, especially considering how much cheese I ate in my life.
Cheese is an amazing product when you think about it. It's probably one of the single best foods at compromising health that you're going to actually feed to people. Think about it. You've got an animal product. So you've got all the issues of biological concentration. You have a highly processed food product. And not only does it have naturally a lot of saturated fat, but you put a lot of salt into it.
There's a strong link between dairy foods and autoimmune diseases. And so that can show itself up as excessive production of mucus and exacerbation of asthma in kids who are prone to that, and even adults. And also there's an association between dairy foods and multiple sclerosis and type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune disease, and other rheumatologic problems.
Cow's milk is baby calf growth fluid. That's what the stuff is. There's absolutely no child or human on earth who actually needs the milk of a cow any more than they need the milk of a giraffe or a mouse.
Most people in the world are lactose intolerant. I mean, that's the normal state of affairs. Why would your body create this enzyme to digest lactose after weaning, after infancy? It doesn't make any sense.
73% of African Americans are lactose intolerant, 95% of Asians, roughly 70% of Native Americans, and about 53% of Hispanic Americans are lactose intolerant. Our government is encouraging Americans of color to eat foods that it knows is going to make them ill. Ultimately, what that boils down to is the government is telling me as an African American to eat food that's going to make me ill for no health benefit so that it will benefit dairy farmers. As a form of institutionalized racism.
Yeah, milk is a risky food for human consumption. As a pediatrician, I see on a daily basis children suffering from conditions that are linked or associated to dairy consumption, such as eczema, acne, constipation, acid reflux, iron deficiency, anemia. Cow's milk protein is the most allergenic food.
People say, well, no, I want hormone-free, not injected with bovine growth hormone. But milk is this hormonal fluid, so it's just packed with sex hormones and natural sex steroid hormones like estrogen, progesterone. In fact, doesn't matter if it's conventional milk, doesn't matter if it's organic milk. Milk without hormones, that's an oxymoron. Organic dairy has just as much saturated fat and cholesterol and galactose and all the things that you don't want as conventional dairy.
Dairy products in general have a lot of other products associated with it, not the least of which is pus. I mean, they actually have laws limiting how much pus you can actually have in a milk and still sell it. I believe it's like 750,000 pus cells per cc. Because, I mean, you wouldn't want too much pus and it would be like pure pus. People might object. In fact, you could think of cheese as kind of coagulated cow pus, if you will.
Researchers have studied bone development in kids and whether they get stress fractures and that kind of thing. And the kids who drink the most milk have zero protection. Milk does not build strong bones. Harvard researchers have looked at a large group of older women. Over an 18-year period, the milk drinkers had zero protection from fractures. So this old notion that somehow milk is going to build strong bones or protect your bones later in life, it's a myth.
People that drink milk have higher rates of hip fractures, have more cancer, and live shorter lives.
It turns out that countries with the highest dairy consumption also have the highest rates of osteoporosis, so clearly drinking more milk doesn't protect your bones. Doing more research, I found that dairy was linked to many different types of cancer as well. Just like many of us, I thought that the majority of cancer was due to genes, but only 5 to 10% of cancer is actually genetic.
Any cancer is caused by a DNA mutation, but that's not enough. So that can cause that first cancer cell, but one cancer cell never killed anyone. 2 cancer cells never killed anyone. But 1 billion cancer cells, now we're running into problems. So we need to reduce the growth factors in our body, like IGF-1. Insulin-like growth factor 1 is this cancer-promoting growth hormone involved in every stage of cancer cell growth and spread and metastases. Any animal protein boosts the level of IGF-1.
Dairy products increases your risk for various forms of cancer, especially those related to your hormones. So breast cancer, prostate cancer, ovarian cancer. So this is not a product, even in its most pure state, you want to be consuming because it does come with risk.
I found out that dairy can increase a man's chance of getting prostate cancer by 34%. And for women who've had breast cancer, just 1 serving of whole dairy a day can increase their chance of dying from the disease 49%, and dying from anything 64%.
It turns out that the casein protein, that's the main protein in dairy products, and particularly in cheese, it breaks apart in the human digestion to create what are called casomorphins, casein-derived morphine-like compounds that go to the brain and they attach to the very same receptor that heroin attaches to. Don't get me wrong, they're not as strong as that, but they are strong enough to make you come back again and again and again, despite the fact that you're gaining weight, you're more unhealthy than you've ever been, but that cheese just calls out to people.
Casomorphin may play a role in SIDS, in sudden infant death syndrome, may play a role in autism. This is one of the reasons why we don't want infants drinking milk from cows.
Human breast milk has 2.7 grams of casein per liter, compared to 26 grams per liter for cow's milk. That's practically 10 times more. No wonder it's so addictive. This talk about addiction made me think about all the drugs animals are fed. I went to the headquarters of the Center for Food and Safety, the nation's leading FDA government watchdog group, to see how concerned we need to be about drugs in our food.
So that we know of, there are at least 450 different drugs that are administered to animals, either alone or in combination. These drugs are given to animals for a variety of reasons, very, very few of which are actually beneficial to consumer health.
We've got drug companies that work real hard to make sure they can sell lots of drugs to people raising cows, pigs, and chickens.
The pharmaceutical industry sells 80% of all the antibiotics that it makes in the United States to animal agriculture. Antibiotic residues are found in meat, other antimicrobials are found in meat, there's been ractopamine found in meat, there's been hormones found in meat. So right there you're talking about 4 different drugs. It could be, in the same piece of meat. The pharmaceutical company is supposed to show the safety of animal drugs. They're not really testing to see what the impacts of these drugs are on humans. They're really looking to see what the impacts of these drugs are on animals.
When we try to get information on some of the health studies and the environmental studies from federal agencies, we get back page after page of blacked out information because the company claimed confidential business information.
Consumers have no idea what is in the products that they consume.
So how sick something makes me and how bad it pollutes the environment is a secret for a company.
In the animal agriculture industry, as in the tobacco industry, these companies really have a vested interest in making sure that the public doesn't have information about their effects and what risks are really posed to consuming them.
Have this system where animals are living in their own waste. They're living next to animals that are sick or even dead, and they're stuck in cages with these animals. The bacteria tends to spread, so that the pathogens that are being created in these filthy conditions are breeding resistance to antibiotics, and the public are becoming exposed to those.
We already have people dying from salmonella and other things that you eat. We're having about 3,000 people die every year in the United States. That's more than the number of people that were killed in 9/11 in the Twin Towers in New York.
I had always thought there was no prevention for type 1 diabetes, but then I did research and came across countless studies referencing the link between exposure to dairy at a young age and type 1 diabetes.
I mean, this is a food made for baby cows. Cow milk protein gets into the bloodstream, and the body says, hey, this isn't supposed to be in the bloodstream. It makes antibodies to the cow milk protein, which then attack the pancreas and destroy the pancreas.
How is this possible that ADA wouldn't have this forefront on their website? Why wouldn't they be warning all parents about this, even if they're only a slight chance? Why were they recommending people to actually eat these foods linked to diabetes? It seemed all of the large health organizations were encouraging people to eat the very foods linked to the diseases they're supposed to be fighting against. American Heart Association promoting beef, American Cancer Society promoting processed meat, pink ribbons on dairy products, and bacon-wrapped shrimp on American Diabetes Association. And then it all came together. What if? And there it was. The American Diabetes Association was taking money from Dannon, one of the world's largest dairy yogurt producers, Kraft Foods, makers of Velveeta processed cheese, Oscar Mayer processed meats, Lunchables processed kids meals, and Bumblebee Foods, makers of processed canned meats. American Cancer Society was taking money from Tyson, one of the world's largest meat producers, and Yum Brand, owner of Pizza Hut, KFC, and Taco Bell. Susan G. Komen was supposed to be fighting breast cancer, was corporate partnering with KFC, Dietz Watson Processed Meats, and Yoplait Yogurt. And the American Heart Association was probably the most disturbing of all, taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from the beef industry, poultry, and dairy producers, and millions from fast food and processed food manufacturers. Every single one of these organizations was taking money from meat and dairy companies that are associated with the causes of these diseases. This would be like the American Lung Association taking money from the tobacco industry.
Then there's the whole pharmaceutical aspect of it, and the fact that there's a very strong pharmaceutical industry and lobby that has a huge stake in preserving the status quo.
And these chronic diseases, these are the cash cows of the pharmaceutical industry.
We have a $5 billion stent industry. Do they ever want to see that go away? We've got a $35 billion statin drug industry. Do they ever want to see that go away?
I'm talking about the pharmaceutical industry effectively controls what doctors are told.
Most research isn't put into prevention, it's put into the medication that we might use for that particular disease.
Conventional medical treatment, whether it be for autoimmune disease or even conditions like high blood pressure or diabetes, you're told that you have to take drugs, and not just for a week or a month or a year. You're told you have to take drugs forever. You're guaranteed that if you follow your doctor's advice, you'll be sick forever. You'll never get well. That's the guarantee, because the strategies are all about manipulating the symptoms, not dealing with the underlying cause.
You come in with that diagnosis, you get a bunch of pills that have nothing to do with the disease causation, or you get these procedures that have nothing to do with disease causation.
It's a deception to say this pill will help you unclog your arteries, this one will save you from a stroke. No, it doesn't. The people who take the statins, etc., they still get their heart attacks, they still get their strokes. This is not reverse disease. This does not make plaques smaller. This is a fraud of massive proportions.
In the U.S., treating chronic disease such as heart disease, cancer, and diabetes is a $1.5 trillion industry. That's the GDP equivalent of the 10th richest country in the world. I went back and dug deeper into the health organization's funding, and there it was again. These organizations were accepting millions of dollars from pharmaceutical companies that are making billions of dollars from the very same diseases these health groups are supposedly trying to end. It seemed like a major conflict of interest, unless ending these diseases isn't really the goal. The pharmaceutical industry spends more money on lobbying than any other single industry. Just like animal agriculture, they are so powerful they write their own laws that have had activists imprisoned to silence them.
Government's in bed with anyone that gives them the most money, which is the pharmaceutical industry, which is the animal ag industries. Like, they are pumping the government full of money and resources, and in return the government's giving them what they want: subsidies, imprisoning activists that go against them. And I think it's quite telling that these industries are working so hard and spending so much money to criminalize people for simply taking a picture, for simply recording what's going on inside of these facilities and making it known to the public. They're behind walls. They're underground. They're in these secret facilities that no one knows about. But if they did, they would be shocked and outraged. And I think people would not want to think that their pharmaceuticals, that their food are coming from these places. And that's why I think it's the ag laws are what they are, is because they are trying to silence people into not speaking out and not showing the truth.
I had heard enough. I was utterly disgusted by the corruption, the greed, the disease, and the abuse I was learning about. The very animals we were killing us and the planet. But so many people eat meat and dairy every day of their lives, and we are so concerned about getting enough protein.
Do we have to eat meat to get complete protein?
Oh my God. Oh my God. You want me to jump off this building, don't you? Well, first of all protein is made by plants. I'll state that again for the record. All protein is initially made by plants, all of it. And it is not necessary to eat animal tissue in order to get protein. Only plants have the ability to actually take nitrogen from the air, break those molecules apart, and incorporate that nitrogen into amino acids and then make protein. Any protein you get from an animal is simply recycled plant protein.
If you ate a diet that was calorically adequate, and even things like brown rice and broccoli, and you got enough of it, you'd get enough both quantity and quality of protein. 2,000 calories of brown rice and broccoli is going to be about 80 grams of protein a day, including the essential amino acids that you need in order to maintain optimum health.
I mean, grains are loaded with protein. Beans are loaded with protein. Vegetables are loaded with protein.
You really want to get your protein from plants because plant proteins have a much more beneficial effect on our physiology.
The funny thing about protein is most Americans get about twice the amount they need. Most Americans get less than half the amount of fiber they need, but the conversation tends to always be about protein. So in my mind, it's just this magical marketing campaign that protein has taken on over the decades.
The question is not where do you get your protein, it's where do you get your fiber?
I have never in my professional career seen a protein deficiency. I've never seen someone come in eating normal amounts of calories and they're protein deficient. You just don't see that.
So human milk has the lowest protein content ever in any species ever tested. I mean, that's the fluid that's been designed by evolution over millions of years. And that's just like the perfect food for human babies, right? Perfect food, lowest protein content any other mammal. And so it gives a sense of kind of protein requirements for anything. So look, then rat milk, ape milk, donkey milk, any milk has ever been tested.
And you hear this a lot in bodybuilders. They're like, well, I need, chicken, or I need fish to be, to be strong, to build muscle tissue. That is utter nonsense. The largest, strongest terrestrial animals on the planet are all herbivores. The biggest, strongest animals are all herbivores.
When we bring in people and they're on meaty diets and we transition them to a plant-based diet, we always track what they're eating. Their vitamin intake goes up. Their nutrition overall goes up, dramatically better. And these same people might worry in advance, will I get the nutrition that I need on a plant-based diet? The fact is, you're not getting the nutrition you need on a meat-based diet, and you're going to get dramatically better nutrition on a plant-based diet.
For an average-sized guy like myself, I need about 56 grams of protein a day. That's optimum. Probably I really need 30 to 40 grams a day. Diets that are really high in these protein create diabetes, create heart disease, create cancer, create the diseases that I'm treating on a daily basis.
But this is the opposite of what all the high-protein diet fads say.
The food you eat determines the bacteria that live in your gut. Well, you eat animal flesh every day. You are summoning up bacteria that eat carnitine, and those bacteria will turn that carnitine into a molecule called trimethylamine. Your liver then turns that into trimethylamine oxide. That's a molecule from hell. That molecule drives cholesterol into the artery walls, and the people who are consuming this flesh-based diet are contributing to plaque building up. They may lose weight on this diet, and that's good, but what's happening inside your arteries, paleo friends? What's happening is that plaque is building up, and these are the folks who drop dead at the gym at 39. Oh, he was lean and he looked really good. But where is that cholesterol going? It's going into your artery walls. So I believe these paleo folks are setting themselves up for an epidemic of clogged arteries, colon cancers, autoimmune diseases. This is not a healthy diet. We are not carnivorous apes.
All these diseases I had learned about were from eating a diet our body wasn't designed for. What would happen if we started eating a diet our body actually was designed for?
The data is crystal clear that you can stop and reverse heart disease with plant-based diets. Scientifically shown, I've seen it in my own patients.
People who adopt low-fat plant-based diets can actually reverse their heart disease, and that literally means watching the plaque start to go away, something they didn't think could happen.
My experience with patients is, and those studies show, that when people adopt a fully plant-based diet, their cholesterol levels plummet within a few days. And if you do blood tests in a couple of weeks, you'll see dramatic improvements.
Yes, your numbers are going to look great within a week or two. Your cholesterol can come crashing down. In fact, if you're on medications, your doctor may have to pull off your blood pressure medication so your blood pressure don't drop too low because it can work too good. Like that, the side effect is not having to take drugs.
In a groundbreaking study published by Dr. Esselstyn following patients suffering from cardiovascular disease, 99.4% were able to avoid major cardiac events by going plant-based.
Because it's not just heart disease. It's hypertension, it's diabetes, it's strokes, it's heart attacks, it's several of the autoimmune diseases, lupus, asthma, GERD, osteoporosis. I mean, there's a multitude of diseases, even rheumatoid arthritis. It can be so dramatic. When you see these poor souls with just absolute crippled with rheumatoid arthritis go plant-based, then they come off their medication.
I wanted to follow up with Jane Chapman, who had been suffering from severe osteoarthritis, and I could not believe what I saw after only a few weeks of fasting and changing her diet.
Those are so amazing. See, like this only a few weeks later.
I know. From going from the walker, needing wheelchair assistance at the airport, to strolling down the street, enjoying the fresh air, the sunshine. 2 weeks. It's all it took, 2 weeks to get off all the meds and start to feel the inflammation just kind of drain out of the body, where the movement was much easier. Just a lot of healing occurred very, very rapidly just by doing the right things for your body.
When you're treating diseases with drugs, you know, there's one drug you take for cholesterol, a different class of drugs you take for high blood pressure, different class of drugs you take for diabetes. But with diet, a plant-based diet affects all these diseases, one diet to kind of rule them all.
The impacts of eating this way go far beyond ourselves. By getting rid of heart disease alone, we would save up to $48 trillion in the USA, 3 times the US GDP.
Conditions like high blood pressure, you don't have to take the drugs the rest of your life and be sick forever. What you can do is live in such a way that it gives the body a chance to heal itself. We took 174 consecutive patients with high blood pressure, and 174 people were able to lower their blood pressure enough to eliminate the need for medication.
For inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's, the best remission rates ever achieved through plant-based diet. MS, multiple sclerosis, the best results ever achieved compared to any medical, surgical, any kind of intervention was a plant-based diet.
You can see that with every sequential reduction in animal products, people live longer, they have less heart disease, they have less cancer, they have less diabetes.
You can actually take human cancer cells, put them in a petri dish, and you can drip the blood of those eating vegan, get about 72% suppression in human prostate cancer cell growth in vitro. They wanted to try this again with women and breast cancer. So they said, let's see what a plant-based diet can do. After just 2 weeks, their bodies cleaned up. You drop their blood on the same carpet of cancer cells. You can clear off the whole plate. This is after just 2 weeks eating healthy, which raises the question, you know, what kind of blood do we want in our body?
Background is in industrial and systems engineering, and that was my career path for a long time until I got thyroid cancer, and everything changed from there. I decided that I wanted to try alternative methods and treatments rather than have surgery and have my thyroid removed, which meant I'd be on medication forever, and I didn't want that. I just started reading how a plant-based diet can heal the body, and it has worked for so many people. So I immediately just switched to a completely whole food plant-based diet. After a year, the cancer was completely gone, and my thyroid had shrunk to normal size, and I was completely free of that.
This was tough to believe. Couldn't this all just be from eating healthier though, like no sugar? Turns out Dr. Walter Kempner from Duke University back in the 1940s was reversing some of our worst killer diseases with diet alone. And the diet he was using was not only strictly plant-based, but it was made up of white rice, fruit, and table sugar.
And he was reversing diabetes, he was reversing malignant hypertension, reversing heart disease, the diabetic complications, reversing diabetic blindness. So these people basically had death sentences, went to him, and were given basically sugar, you know, this horrible diet, but it was strictly plant-based.
If this information had been around since the 1940s, why don't all doctors know this?
We're not taught about the power of food in medical school. No one is taught that the changes that we make with our diet are probably the single most powerful thing we can do to determine our destiny. It trumps our genetics.
Why isn't your doctor telling this? Odds are your doctor never learned any of this. In fact, there's even a bill introduced just mandating physicians get 7 hours nutrition training every couple years, just to kind of stay on top of it. And who came out against that? The California Medical Association. Even the family physicians, the surgeons, all the mainstream medical groups came out opposed.
It's 7 hours. That's a lot, even if it's over 1 4-year period.
So they're not just kind of neutral, but they're actually actively opposing nutrition education.
Ironically, when patients come to doctors with questions, they assume that the doctor knows something about nutrition, and so it's kind of a double whammy that doctors haven't been taught much about nutrition.
Why don't we hear about this from dietitians when nutrition is their entire specialty? Turns out the American Nutrition and Dietetics Association puts out nutrition fact sheets written by the industries themselves. The industries pay $20,000 per fact sheet and explicitly take part in writing them. So you can learn about eggs from the egg industry. You can learn about lamb from the lamb industry. This would be like learning about the benefits of smoking from the tobacco industry.
When people are eating meat, I think of it as a bit like smoking. It's sort of Russian roulette. You may not get diabetes, but your chances of getting diabetes, about 1 in 3. You may not get cancer, but your chances, if you're a man, about 1 in 2. A woman, 1 in 3. Your chances of gaining weight, 2 out of 3. It's not all diet, but most of it is. The best thing that you can do to make sure that you empty all those bullets out of the chamber and you're not taking risks with your health is to get the animal products out of your diet and eat healthy foods.
Valentine's Day, I decided to go vegan and give up all meat, which was never in my thoughts in a while, million years, but I've heard so much success from people that are vegan. And so I gave up all animal products whatsoever. I've lost 29 pounds. I've been able to cut my meds in half. I've been able to cut my insulin in half. And now I'm going for the moon. I'm going to cut it all out. In the last 6 weeks, we've just had 3 grandchildren. And my ugly face is going to be around to see them graduate from high school and college. I'm going to be here.
My mission is to let everybody know you do not have to suffer from diabetes and cancer and heart disease because someone in your family had it or because the doctors are telling you this is what's going to happen. You can take charge of your health and have a positive outcome just like I did. The reason I'm so committed to this is, my grandmother had diabetes, and I didn't know what I know now about healing the body. And if I did, I feel like she could have lived at least a few years longer. And so it's in her honor that I do what I do. Because I could save someone else's grandmother, aunt, uncle, father from that. So I'm excited about getting the message out there.
An exploding movement of elite athletes are utilizing vegan diets to heal injuries, speed recovery times, and enhance their performance.
Before I was vegan, I was only bench pressing 315 like 5 times. And then after going vegan, I was doing 400, 425, 465. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm vegan and I'm bench pressing 465 pounds. This is ridiculous. And as soon as I went vegan, tendonitis started disappearing. My strength in my right arm started coming back. High blood pressure was going down. You can't be strong and be dying on the inside. That's not strong. That's weak. That's really weak because you look big and strong on the outside. Yeah, big man. No, but your heart's crying for help on the inside. You're dying.
I'm a professional parkour athlete, a 2-time world freerunning champion, and more recently I got into Ninja Warrior where I'm captain of Team Europe as we won USA versus the world. For something like Ninja Warrior and parkour specifically, you really need to have a good strength to body weight ratio. So I was carrying mass that I really didn't need. And when I went vegan, I lost 15, 20 pounds. I was more agile, I was more efficient, more stamina in my body. Just that extra bit of pop that I didn't have before, it just gave me that extra strength. So this is a very vibrant way to live. It can enhance you as an athlete. For me, 100% better athlete than I was before. It unlocked a whole new chapter of my training. The science is there, the health is there, the athletes are there proving that you don't need to eat dead animals to be strong, to be healthy.
I started working out when I was 47 years old. All the muscles you see, I gained as vegan. I gained 15 pounds of muscles on my body, eating all plant-based vegan foods. All the aches and pains in my body, it just went away. Because I'm not ingesting so many inflaming foods, the acidic foods that animal products are. Gorillas, rhinos, and elephants, they all get their muscles and strength from eating plants. That's what I do.
I travel all around the world for my surfing, and I've always been able to eat vegan. I feel like if you want something, you can make it happen. I just don't make any excuses. I would never not be vegan now that I know all the benefits and now that I know how it feels to be vegan.
Every aspect of my life has been improved by adopting this lifestyle. I feel better, I perform better athletically, I sleep better, my energy with my kids is better, my focus at work is better, everything is better. My skin cleared up, kept myself trim for 9 years now doing this. All I can tell you is that I felt and I continue to feel better than I ever felt before. My friend Jason Lester and I were the first people to do this challenge called Epic 5, which entailed doing 5 Ironmans on 5 Hawaiian islands in under a week. An Ironman is a 2.4-mile swim followed by a 112-mile bike, and then running a marathon, 26.2 miles after that. So we did 5 of those in a row on 5 different islands in a little under a week.
Yeah. You almost die?
Yeah.
Where'd you die? So I guess the famous question, where did you get your protein in there?
From plants.
Like so many people, I was looking for excuses not to change my diet. But once I finally did, I felt liberated. Within days, I could feel the blood running through my veins with a new vitality. Within weeks, I felt a transformation throughout my entire body and mind. Not only could I survive on a purely plant-based vegan diet, I could thrive. I felt amazing. I competed in my first marathon in 6 years, training half the amount and beat my personal record by 23 minutes. Less than a month later, I did my first full Ironman. Although I could possibly get away with eating a little bit of meat and dairy without ill effects to my personal health, I could no longer willingly support an industry I knew was causing so much suffering to communities, families, and all life on the planet. A whole new world opened up. I felt whole again, connected to a greater sense of what true health is, and where true health doesn't end with me, but begins with us.
If people adopted a plant-based diet, the changes we would see in our individual health, in our national health situation, and in this physical environmental world we live in would be so profound.
I mean, today, you can say, I'm not going to eat that stuff anymore. It's the one thing that I can do myself personally to make a difference.
It will give you a greater sense of well-being and happiness when you know that, one, you're not destroying your health every time you sit down to eat, you're not promoting cruelty, and you're not damaging the earth.
I don't want my gains to be at the detriment of the planet of other things. And yet, I'm not weaker, I'm stronger. That's the beauty of it. When you're altruistic, when you make choices for the greater good of others, it comes around, benefits me as well. It benefits us all.
Studies show that we can not only survive, but we can thrive.
I just feel this is a great way to live. Not harming other beings when we can be healthy and happier. I love it. It's a great life.
I never thought that I could feel this good at this age, and I just want everybody to feel this way. I feel like a 20-year-old. I'm almost 50.
Nothing tastes as good as healthy feels, basically.
And so the choices that we make every single day, day in and day out, around our food, has the capacity to bring us true health and optimal wellness, not just individually, but collectively, as a species and for our planet.
We're not going to live forever. But while we are alive, we can live well. And for me as a doctor, that's what I want to see.
Where there's a will, there is a way. And I believe that.